Alrighty.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thanks everybody for joining us. This event is hosted by the Aurora Public Library District, and the title of this event is Organizing Quick Tips and Cool Hacks. So I will turn it over to Jennifer, our presenter.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys for spending this hour, looking at a screen with me. I appreciate that and I honor your time. So thank you for doing that. If you guys don't mind, I like to use the chat feature to kind of interact, because if we were in person, I'd be able to do that a little more easily. So if you don't mind, during the presentation, make sure your mics are off, just because it just keeps it from being too much reverberation or things like that. But in the chat, I'll ask you questions and things like that to be able to interact. So the first thing is, if you can put in there, just put in the chat, who's in your household? Is it you and a spouse, you and 10 children and an iguana, you and a dog, you and 5 dogs, who's in your household? It just helps me to kind of know who I'm talking to. And I also think that if we were in person, then we would be kind of chatting with each other and finding out who's in our household. So I think that's a really good thing to kind of put out there. So if you guys don't mind putting that in the chat for me, thank you, Susie, for doing that. I really, really appreciate it. Okay, and I'm going to start, I'm going to share my screen. So if you don't have the handout, it's not a big deal at all. You're going to be able to follow along really easily. I'm going to start this for you. And if you guys have any questions throughout, you can absolutely put them in the chat, and I try to answer them as I go. You do not have to feel like you have to wait till the end. If I'm not able to kind of weave it into the talk naturally, then I will answer it at the end. But you can absolutely ask me questions as they come up too. I don't mind that. So like Flannery said, we're going to be talking about organizing quick tips and cool hacks. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about me. My name is Jennifer Barnes. My husband Craig and I have 5 children. We had 5 kids in the space of 5 years with a set of twins, which is how that is physically possible. Our twins are actually not our 2 redheads and not our 2 blondes. They're actually our blonde and redheaded daughters, one in from each end. So I only let you know this so you know I understand chaos. It is really important to me that you know, as an organizer, that I understand how it is to organize with different personalities of people, and how it is to organize with people that are not innately organized, and how to organize with just plain old chaos. So no, my chaos may be different than your chaos, which is different than your neighbor's chaos, but it's chaos all the same. And I tell people this because years ago I heard an organizer speak, and she was wonderful. I had 5 kids under 5 at the time, and I found out at the end of her presentation that it was her in a studio apartment by herself. And I remember, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I remember thinking, gosh, if I was in one room by myself, I feel like I can organize a little better. It's all these other crazy people that make it hard. So I just remember feeling disheartened. So I always introduce my chaos to people so that you know that I at least understand that, like I said, even if it differs from yours. Put my dog there just because he's so darn cute. No other good reason than that. So that's my family. I am a professional organizer and speaker. I speak all over the country on organizing, parenting, and personal and small business development. I absolutely love it. I do speak in person places also. With the pandemic, obviously has brought a good amount of virtual, which, as Flannery and I were talking, it's kind of nice because you can get virtual from the comfort of your own home. And there is something to be said for that. So I do speak all over the place. I also work with individual clients on organization. I tell people I specialize in real organizing for real people doing real life. We don't live on HDTV. I don't live on HDTV. You don't live on HDTV. We might want to, but we don't. But the thing is our organization has to work in the real world. It has to work with the chaos of your life, with your home, your personality, your family. I mean, whatever makes up your life, your organization has to work for that. So I work very hard to have it be customed and reality-based, very functional, and I love teaching people to organize. My greatest joy is clients send me texts and send me pictures and say, look what I did based on what you taught me. So probably a really poor business model, because I'm always working myself out of a job, but that's okay. because to me, it's a life change, not just a space change. And I work really hard to have it be maintainable and sustainable for my clients. The third thing I do is virtual organizing. I tell people, virtual organizing is a good fit for you. If you just need a little bit of an outside perspective on a space and maybe some help getting started and some accountability, but you really feel like in the meantime, you can do it on your own, then that's how you know virtual organizing is good for you. It is not good for everybody, but it is something that I'm able to offer, which I absolutely love. Okay, so that's just a little bit about me. And so thank you so much for putting in your in the chat who's in your household. I love to see that. Let you give me a little glimpse of your chaos and what your house is made up of. So about organizing in general, how many of you guys put a 1 in the chat, just a number 1, if you have ever thought, I'm going to get organized so I can do more things? Just put a number 1 in the chat if you've ever had that kind of thought, like I'm going to get organized so I can do more things. Now, again, that's a very common thought. We often think that. And I want you, instead, I want you to kind of throw that out a little bit. And I want you instead to think, I want to get organized so I can more easily give more work away. So I want you to get organized so you can do less. I want you to organize so you can more easily delegate and give people more responsibility and things like that. So the blanket statement of organization that I want hovering in the back of your mind is that good organization should breed independence, delegation, and responsibility for everybody else, and not more work for the organizer. That's really important to me. So I want that to be your benchmark that you measure it against. So we're going to get organized so you can do less and give more work away. All right, now organizing is one of those things, it's very personal. Remember, I asked you guys who's in your household? Well, each of you had a different answer. That's just who makes up your household. If I had asked you, what is your house like, or your condo like, or your apartment like, you would give me another answer. If I asked you, what's your personality like, I would get a whole set of other answers. So organizing is very personal. It really has to fit all of those things. Who's in your house itself, or your place you're living itself, and your personality, your routines, all of that kind of stuff. So organizing is very personal. So be where you are, and that's okay. So take whatever advice I give you, and if you have to tweak it a little, if you have to turn it or twist it to get it to fit in, absolutely fine. Just know that it's okay to have it be customized, and that's really important. On the flip side, there's a lot that can be said on organization. I have probably 25 different talks on organizing alone, and this is one of them, one piece of the pie, so to speak. So if you came wanting to hear a very specific thing and I don't cover it, I truly apologize. There's just so much to be said. So just know that it's a really personal topic, customizable, but very general and very broad, and so much that can be said about it. So just keep that in mind as we go forward as well. Now, you might look at this slide and go, what does this have to do with organizing? This is the thing, is in my experience, every talk I give, no matter what I'm talking about, I start with this because it is the biggest obstacle to moving forward and improving anything, whether it be our home, our health, our relationships, anything. Comparisons are the biggest roadblock that can freeze us and stop us in our tracks and keep us from moving forward. So it's really important to name our roadblocks, to call out the obstacles so that we can get over them. If we don't call them out, if we don't see the obstacles for what they are, then we can't get over them. I always use the example of hurdles. If you're running hurdles, can you imagine running hurdles if you could not see them? That would be a mess. So not seeing our obstacles and not naming them actually stops us. So when we name them, we take some of their power away and we get them out of our way. So comparisons are one of those things that they really can get in our way. So how many of you guys put a number 2 in the chat if you feel like you've been on social media more in the past 2 years than prior to the pandemic? And again, not a wrong answer for this. This talk is not about the good and bad or other of social media, but it's just to be aware. Now, a lot of us have. right? So we just need to know that when we are looking on social media, we are comparing our backstory with somebody else's highlight reel. And that is a dangerous game. So let me say that again. When we are looking on social media, we are comparing our backstory, our baggage with somebody else's highlight reel. And we need to be aware of that because that's what kind of we look and we go, my family's never going to be like that, so why bother? My house is never going to look like that, so why bother? Do you see what the damage that it can do? So just be aware of that when you're looking at it. And you know what? This is one of those things I tell people, put it on a Post-it, let go of comparisons, stick it to your laptop. Put it on a Post-it and stick it to your bathroom mirror. This continual reminder of to let go of comparisons. Now, the other one is not just comparisons on social media, but in like Real Simple Magazine, HGTV shows, anything like that. If we can't look at those without it making us feel less than, then we need to not look at them. If we can look at them and get some good ideas, that's wonderful. But if it's a day when you can't, you look at it and it's like, oh, this just is disheartening. My family never picks up and my family room is never going to look like this magazine. Then don't look at it. Okay. So letting go of comparisons, call that obstacle out, get it out of our way. Now, the next obstacle is perfection. You got to be honest with me. Put a number 1 in the chat if you feel like you're a perfectionist. How many perfectionists do we have here? Put a 1 in the chat if you feel like you are a perfectionist. And again, I would probably put myself in that category. So I'm not criticizing anybody. But the thing is with perfection, remember our whole thing with organization is good organization breeds independence, delegation, and responsibility for other people. We can't do that if we're holding on to the enemy of perfection. And perfection means different things to different people. It could be the perfect family, the perfect house, the perfect way to do something. We can't give kids responsibility to make their beds if it has to be done a certain way. We can't give our partner or our spouse responsibility to empty the dishwasher or fill the dishwasher if it has to be done a certain perfect way. So letting go of that perfection is a really important thing so that we can move forward with the improvements that we want to make. So whatever perfection means to you, fellow perfectionists, the very last obstacle that I want to call out is what doesn't meet your priorities. And again, you might be like, oh, what does this have to do with organizing? I tell you what, years ago, I was talking to someone said, hey, Jen, can you come in and organize my craft area for me? And I said, sure. I said, no problem. So I went in and I was chatting with her. And I realized she didn't even like crafts. In fact, she hated them. And I said, why do you want me to organize your craft area? And she said, well, I have all these supplies, nice craft supplies. I should have a nice craft area. And I was like, no. If it's not a priority for us, we need to let that go. And again, you might think, well, I wouldn't do that. That's really extreme. Hey, but here's an example from my own life is I feed my family and I feed my family pretty well. I do. I mean, I make some home cooked meals, blah, blah, blah. I hate cooking. I hate it. I really don't like anything having to do with it, to be very honest with you. So the level of organization in my kitchen can be here. And I have friends, and some of you guys may cook with things I've never even heard of. So level of organization in your kitchen may need to be up here. I had to let this gap go and say, you know what, I'm okay here. I don't need to spend the money, time, energy, any of that stuff to get it up to here when it fits my priorities down here. Does that make sense? So I really want you to look at what's important to you. And if you really want, so I tell people when I first meet them, even before we work together, when I do a discovery consult, I have them write down what are the top 10 most important things in your life, not organizing projects. I'm talking what is important to you. So you can do this while I'm talking to you. But I tell people do it 3 times a year, around January, around June, and around August, September. Okay, because those are when significant shifts happen in our life. Even if you don't have people in school, there's shifts in the seasons, shift in things in our life. Write down what is important to you. Then make sure. And when I talk to people about time and task management, I do this, is I want you then, you look at your bank statement and your calendar. That's how you know what is really important to somebody. So does your priority list match what you're spending your time and money on? If it doesn't, and sadly, a lot of times it doesn't. If it doesn't, then adjust. But I want you to look at your priorities, because everything you do organizationally should make it easier for you to do the things that are important to you. So an example that I give is, if like say someone says, exercise is important to me, then good organization should make it easy for you to find your gym bag, find your yoga mat, have a place to exercise, or get out the door easily. Say you like to have people over, you like hospitality. Good organization should make it easier for you to have people over spontaneously and large planned things. So your organization should back up what's important to you. So we need to give ourselves permission to let go of the things that aren't important to us. All right. So get that. And believe it or not, a lot of times we do things out of habit, and we do things that maybe we shouldn't be because they're not important to us. So I want you to take the time to do that exercise. It is very beneficial. All right. Now, remember, good organization breeds independence, delegation, and responsibility for other people, not more work for the organizer. It helps us give work away. And this applies whether you're at outside if you work outside the home, or you're in your home, or whatever it is, it should be easier. Now, these 5 principles of organization, you can take these 5 and you can bring order to anything, anywhere. So you can mentally apply these to whatever area you want. It really doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm going to go through them a little one at a time. And it makes an acronym order, so pretty easy to do. But the first thing is one step at a time. And I know you might be like, well, that's not rocket science. Well, this is the thing, is a lot of times we don't take things one step at a time. In fact, I want you guys you got to be honest with me, no lying here. Put a 2 in the chat if you've ever gone and said, I'm going to organize this room, and you work for an hour, and you look and you go, what did I even get done? Did I just move things around? Put a 2 in the chat if you've ever had that feeling where you work for an hour and you look and go, did I just shift things? Or what did I even get done? A lot of times that happens to us. So what I want you to do instead is I want you to take whatever project it is, and I'm going to use the example of a garage. Because tell me this. Put a 1 in the chat if you've ever had organize or clean your garage, or like storage area or something like that, on your to-do list for a very long time. Put a 1 in the chat if that's the case. If you've had a project like that, I call it haunting your to-do list. When something stays on my to-do list for a long time, I call it haunting my to-do list. So a garage is something that haunts our to-do list. And why is that? The reason is it's so big. It's so big. It's so overwhelming. It takes so much time. And we look at it and we go, I don't have hours, a weekend, a week, a month to go through this. So I'm just not going to do it. So what I want you to do is, if you take every project and you break it down one step at a time, you go, and I'll use the garage as an example. You walk out of your house into the garage, look to your left. You don't just do it one step at a time. I want you working methodically around that space, corner to corner, top to bottom. Very important. Because remember that zigzagging all over the room doesn't do anything. If you work methodically, corner to corner, top to bottom, you look to your left, you walk out into the garage, and you look, and there's one shelf there. And you do 1 foot of one shelf, that's one step. Next shelf, the next step. Next shelf, the next step. And now you guys might look and go, Jen, I don't even have shelves in my garage, it's piles of boxes. Okay, fair enough. And box number 1, that's one step. Box number 2, the next step. So working methodically, corner to corner, top to bottom, it does 2 things. It shows you progress. If you have 15 minutes to work, you can look and go, I spent 15 minutes. I did that 1 foot of that one shelf. Yay me. It shows progress. And when we see progress, we're motivated to keep going. If we can't see progress, it is so easy to get frustrated. The second thing working methodically, one step at a time does, is it shows us where we left off. Because we don't have blocks of hours of energy and time to work with. We have minutes of energy and time to work with. So if you do little steps, when you have to step away from that project, you can come back and you know exactly where you left off because you're working methodically around the space. So one step at a time, work methodically around that space, very important. Second principle, reduce the clutter. Always, 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 have I given enough always? Always declutter before you organize. Now, this is common, right? Put a 3 in the chat if you've ever said, I'm going to organize this space and you ran out to Target, the Container Store, Walmart, IKEA, and bought lots of supplies. Be honest with me, put a 3 in the chat if you've ever done that, where you're like, oh, I'm going to organize, and you went out and bought lots of supplies. Oh, come on. I know there's some of you have done that. And again, very common to do, very common to do. But instead, next time you try to tackle a project, I want you to go, I'm going to declutter first. Because otherwise we end up spending time and money on things, supplies to organize things, half of which we get rid of. Okay, so always declutter first. Now my 5-bin organizing or decluttering system is this. You take these 5 bins and you put them in the exact area that you are working. You're not allowed to leave the area you're working. What happens when we leave the area that we're working? Somebody put in the chat, what happens to us? When we leave the area we're working, what happens? Oh, come on. If you've ever read the books, the children's books, Distraction, if you've ever read the children's books, Give a Pig a Pancake or Give a Mouse a Cookie, those are about adults. They're about adults trying to do a project. Yeah, we do something else. We lose interest. We get distracted. It's all of those things. So you don't want to leave that area. If you have 15 minutes of time to work with, you have 5, 10, 15 minutes increments of time. You don't want to waste half of them getting distracted. So you put these 5 decluttering bins right where you live, right where you are working. Now the bins are this. The first one is throwaway. And that can be divided into recycle, shred, burn, any of those things. But it's anything you're going to dispose of. That's the first one. Second one is a put away. And yes, you heard me right. It's a put away. So anything that doesn't have a specific home in the exact area that you're working goes into the put away because you're not allowed to leave the area you're working. So what you do is you put it in the put away and later set a timer for 15 minutes, pick up your put away bin, walk around the house and put things away. But while you're working, decluttering and stuff, put it in the put away bin. The third bin is a file away. All that is a put away for paper. Now, if you're doing a garage, you're not going to need a file away because there's probably not much paper. All right. Now, the fourth one is giveaway, pretty self-explanatory. And the fifth one is one that people don't need to use when they're working with me because I kind of talk them through things and why they're keeping them. But sometimes if you have a hard time getting rid of things and you're really not sure, maybe you don't think you need something, but you're really not ready to part with it, you put it in the fifth bin, which is called the hideaway bin. Now the hideaway bin, this is the key. You put the item in the hideaway bin and you give that bin to a friend and say, if I have not asked you for this within a month, you have my permission to donate it. You have to do that last part. Now, the key is in 23 years of doing this, I have never had anyone take anything out of the hideaway bin because your gut instinct of I need it or I don't is right on. It's only when we go, well, maybe ... that we trip ourselves up. Okay. So your gut instinct that you first have is right on. Okay. So I'm going to go through those really quick. The first one's throw away. Second one is put away. Third one is file away. Fourth one is giveaway. And the fifth one is hide away if you need it. Okay. So you put those bins right where you're working. And you might be like, well, I don't, now these are not bins. These are temporary staging boxes. Okay. It can be Amazon boxes, and don't lie and say you don't have any Amazon boxes, right? We always have those. Okay. So, but they're just bins. They can be laundry baskets. It doesn't matter. But it gives you a place to put each of those categories. Because tell me this, put a 1 in the chat if this has ever happened, where you're organizing an area and you go and you have to leave because you ran out of time, and you come back later that night and you have a pile of put away, a pile of giveaway, a pile of throwaway, and you're like, I can't deal with this right now, and you shove it into the corner I'll deal with it later, and it's all jumbled up. Sound familiar? Right? That happens. So if you have it in bins, in the Amazon boxes, in the laundry basket, separate it out. When you run out of time, you just push those bins to the side and you can come back to them the next time you have a small block of time. Really important. The last thing is make sure you label those bins just with a Sharpie. If you're using Amazon boxes, put away, label giveaway. Do not assume that you're going to remember, oh, that was put away versus giveaway. Why bother remembering? Label it and you don't have to rethink it again. Okay, so use those bins, very important for decluttering. The third principle is decide categories. So once you've gotten rid of the things that you don't want, I want you to look at it and decide the categories. The example I give with this is a junk drawer. You might be like, Jen, you're an organizer, you shouldn't have a junk drawer. No, we can have organized junk drawers, mind you. But a junk drawer, meaning I can say that you know exactly what I'm talking about. That drawer in the kitchen that has all the different things. But once you declutter it, you're going to have categories. So you may have in a junk drawer, you probably have pens, pencils, tools, tape, charging cords. So you look at them and go, okay, what categories of things do I have? So separate the items that you have left into categories. So an example I give is we don't need 10 different places in our house for Scotch tape. So put all the Scotch tape into one area. So decide on the categories, condense like items together into one spot. Now, you might be like, what does this have to do with anything? Think about this. If someone comes in and says, hey, do you know where the Scotch tape is? And you say, well, it could be here, it could be here, it could be here, it could be here. Never mind, I'll go get it for you, right? Oh, what was our main principle of organization? Good organization breeds independence, delegation, and responsibility for other people, not more work for the organizer. So you having to get up and show them where the Scotch tape is because it's in so many places doesn't lend itself to organization. Now, if all the Scotch tape is condensed into one area, one category, someone comes in and says, hey, do you know where the Scotch tape is? You said, yes, right over there. And you don't even have to get up. Okay, so key thing, putting the like items together, deciding on categories and condensing the like items together. The fourth principle is once you have your categories, enclose them in containers. Now, it doesn't have to be a bin or a basket. A container can be a file folder if it's papers. A container can actually be a file on your phone, like a digital container. A container can be a file on your email that puts like emails together. So a container is whatever that category of items needs to be contained. So the containment principle, enclosing in containers, is essential for keeping us from expanding. Very, very important. So think about it this way. In your pantry, put a 2 in the chat if you've ever had a bag of chips, a ream of crackers, a thing of cereal fall behind, and you clean your pantry every couple of years, and you were like, I didn't even know that was there. Put a 2 in the chat if that has happened in your cabinet, your pantry, wherever. Come on, there should be lots of 2s. Happens to so many people. It is so common. So the containment principle, what it does is if you contain all the chips into a bin, then what it does is it keeps them from expanding, keeps them from falling behind. The next thing it does is it gives us visual cues that say, stop, wait, my chip bin is full. I don't need any more chips, stop. Or my chip bin is empty, I need to go to the grocery store. It gives us visual cues that say stop or go, which are essential. Okay, so when we do not contain ourselves, we expand. Chips crawl to the second shelf and the third shelf. They crawl all over the place. It's crazy. So if you contain them, it keeps things from expanding. The last principle to bring order to anything, anywhere is write labels. Now, you do not have to write the labels. You can use a label maker. It was just for the sake of my acronym that I had write labels. But the point is label everything. Now, you might say, well, Jen, I don't need to label the bin because I know what's in there. What was my main principle of organization? Good organization breeds independence, delegation, and responsibility for other people. Not more work for you. I don't care if you know what's in the bin. I want everybody else to know what's in the bin. That's important. So one step at a time in reducing clutter gets rid of the junk. Deciding the categories and enclosing in containers gets you organized. Writing the labels keeps you organized. It is a very important step to do. Make sure you do that step. Now, here is your litmus test that you can use to make sure an area is organized. Now, you can do one drawer and use this litmus test. And what it is I want you to pretend you were taken out of the picture for a weekend. Not for anything bad, because you're on a tropical vacation, okay? You're taken out of the picture for a weekend. Can somebody else come into your space and easily do and find everything? That's how you know that space is organized. Now, you might be like, oh my gosh, no, Jen, no, not in my house. Don't think about the whole house right now. Think about, if you organize a drawer, then look at that drawer and say, can somebody else come into my space without me here in this drawer and do and find everything? If the answer is yes, then that space is organized. Okay, so that is your litmus test for organizing any space. And the labeling is essential for that. Okay, so those 5 principles of organizing you can take and you can apply to organize anything, anywhere. Now, the next thing, as far as organizing or really any project, is a timer. And you might be like, again, not rocket science. No, it's not. But I will tell you, our brains go into efficiency mode when we set a timer. If you don't believe me, I want you to think about this. If someone calls you and says, hey, I'm in town, do you want to get together? And you say, sure, I'd like to get together. And they say, okay, I'll be over in 20 minutes. And they hang up the phone. Put a 1 in the chat if you are not the most productive person in the entire universe in that 20 minutes. I should see a gazillion 1s, because that is so, what happens is our brain goes into efficiency mode. That person essentially said, a timer, you have 20 minutes, timer starts now, go. That's what they did. And we go into efficiency mode. We focus differently with a timer. And again, if you don't believe me, think of this. I don't know if we have any teachers in the audience or previous teachers or anything, but in school, they don't just say, whenever you get a chance, finish your math test. They don't do that. They say, you have a math test, you have 50 minutes, start now, go. And they do that because we go into efficiency mode when we set a timer. So it is a very powerful thing. I work with a lot of people who have ADD and ADHD, and setting a timer, not for an hour, but for 5, 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20, focuses us. And if you do that, you set a timer, say for emails. Emails can suck us in, but if we set a timer for 20 minutes, I'm going to do emails for 20 minutes, then do another task. It allows our brain to focus. We don't have a lot of people with kids in it, but so I'm just going to do this part really quickly. But kids stop bugging you if you set a timer. You might be like, no way. Think about this. What do kids come up to us and they say, they're like, mom, 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 grandma, grandma. And what do we say to them? 1 minute. We hold up our finger and we go, 1 minute. And I used to joke, and I think it's true, is my kids probably didn't know what a real minute was for a very long time. If someone asked them what a minute is when they were little, they'd probably be like, oh, a week, a day, a year, because I'd say a minute and it wasn't a true minute. It wasn't. And so the reason kids bother us is because they don't know when their minute's coming. So if you set a timer and say, hey, I'm going to read with you for 15 minutes, and then set another timer and mommy's going to work for 15 minutes. And then I'm going to play with you for another 15 minutes, set a timer. And then I'm going to work on this for 15 minutes again. If you do that, they relax, they know their minute's coming, and they stop. Now, the caveat is don't use a timer on your phone because you don't want them picking up your phone every 2 seconds. Do one of those old oven timers like in the picture that they can see and see it ticking and everything. Makes a big difference. So use the timer. It's a hidden tool that we have in front of us and we don't often use. Now, organizing and communication. You can have things organized really, really well. But if you don't communicate it with the other people that come in and out of your house, it's not going to stick. So improving communication makes a big difference. So communicate to figure out first, what are the daily struggles? What are the priorities? Remember, we talked about that. If you live with other people, I'd communicate with them and say, because what you perceive as the struggles may not be what they perceive as the struggles. So, or what you perceive as the priority may not match what they perceive as a priority. So make sure you communicate and say, hey, what do you think could be done more efficiently? What areas are frustrating to you? Communicate that, okay? The second thing to communicate is communicate to get help. If you feel overwhelmed and you want a friend or a family member or professional organizer or whatever to help you, communicate that. I always tell people working with your spouse or your partner is a hard thing to do with organization. Not to say that you can't, but it is a hard thing with organization because you can feel judged. They're like, just throw that out. And you're like, wait a second, you don't understand. So that can be hard. So I tell people, get a friend that you feel like can tell you the truth, but you're not going to be offended if they do tell you the truth. And it's funny, that's actually one of the roles I think an organizer or someone that's like a non-biased party actually does really well for. So whoever, that kind of thing. But communicate to get help. The last part is communicate to maintain. Once you get it organized, say, hey, here's where the Scotch tape is. It's labeled. Do you see that? That communicate. Or in the pantry, see, I've labeled this. It's set. Here's where the things go. If you change things because you're condensing like items together, communicate that. And that is going to help you maintain it. If you don't communicate it, they're not going to know to put it back. Okay? So organization and communication is really important. Now, these 4 T's, they are vital in communication. Now, any problem I've ever had with any person, whether it be a spouse, a child, a coworker, or someone I volunteer with, a friend, anything, anytime, I can usually trace back to not having communicated one of these 4 things clearly. And again, you might be like, what do you mean? Well, we are the first one, task. We're really good at telling people what to do. You know, this is, I need you to put your toys away. I need you to put the mail here. We are really good at saying the task. But a lot of times we just say, so here's an example. If you have a little kid, and I say this, whether you have kids or not, you'll identify with this. If you have a little kid and the little kid's sitting there and they're playing with their cars, and one parent comes in and says, hey, Johnny, can you please pick up your cars? Now, I have other talks on parenting. We're not going to go into this now, whether they should or should not listen just because you've asked them. But the point is, they may or may not pick up their cars. But if 5 minutes later, another person comes in and says, Johnny, please pick up your cars. By the time this timer goes off, if you don't, you're going to lose your cars. And if you do, you get 30 minutes of screen time. Which person do you think they're going to listen to? The first or the second? The second, right? Because it's not because they loved one person more than the other or child respected one more than the other. It's just we as humans are constantly trying to prioritize things in our life. We have so much pulling at us. Kids are the same way. That we are constantly going, who is expecting the most out of me? That's who I'm going to listen to. So when we just say, pick up your cars, there's no urgency, there's nothing, but the second person gave them more information. Now, if you don't believe me, think about this. In schools, what do? They say, you have a paper in social studies. It's due by end of class on Wednesday. That's your time and your task. If you don't do it, you're going to get a bad grade. If you do, you'll get a better grade, right? They have said task, time, treat, and trouble. At any workplace, they say, we need this client proposal done. There's your task. By 5 o'clock on Friday, there's your time. If you don't do it, we can lose the client. If you do it, you get a bonus. They have delineated the task, the time, the treat, and the trouble. So everywhere else in the world does this. But at home, we think we can say, just please pick up your cars. So think about that. Now, some people have asked me before, does this work for spouses or other adults? I do think it does, because consider this example. If one friend comes to me and says, hey, Jen, can you please pick up a gallon of milk for me? Okay, no problem. I love to help my friends. Not a problem at all. And then maybe a half hour later, another friend comes to me and says, Jen, can you pick up a gallon of milk for me by 2 o'clock? because if I don't, I'm not going to be able to finish my daughter's cupcakes. And if you do, I'm going to be the best room mom there is. Which friend do you think I'm going to help first? First or second? The second. And it's not because I love one friend more than the other. It's just because the second one gave me the information my brain needed to make the decision who to do first, second, to prioritize. Okay. So the last thing is, like, say, for example, with my husband, if I said to him, hey, we need to talk about summer travel plans. Now, we may or may not talk about summer travel plans. But if I said to him, dear, we need to talk about summer travel plans by 5 o'clock on Friday, because if we don't, we're going to pay $1,000 more in airfare. And if we do, we're going to save money. Guess what? We're talking about summer travel plans probably within the hour, purely because I gave him what he needed to make the decision. So these 4 T's are so important, whether you are in a workplace, whether you're with your friends, whether you're with your family, whether you're doing things in your house, is communicate the things. If you've organized, the toys and you want it to be maintained, communicate the expectations of that space. If you've organized where the paperwork goes, communicate the expectations of that space. It goes a long way in maintaining the organization. Now, this is a fun rhyme, but it really is to show you, we're shifting a little bit now from maintaining the organization that you did to some of the kind of hacks. The first thing is there's a lot of wasted space. So I actually wrote this rhyme, and I'm going to read it to you as a way to remember. It's kind of Dr. Seuss-like, but it helps us remember to use the wasted space. So use the space near the ceiling, space near the floor, space in the corners, space on the door. Don't neglect the forgotten space on all the walls, and soon the space that you have will not seem so very small. So we often forget to use, we look at a little place and go, I have no space. We forget to look at the back of doors, the corners, the part near the ceiling, the walls themselves, under beds, things like that. So the space near the ceiling, one thing you can do is, if you have little kids or grandkids or your own kids, put artwork on a string in the playroom. Just put nails in a string, and you take clothespins and put clip artwork to that string. It uses space that we don't use for anything else. Another thing is high shelves. In your garage, there is a lot of wasted space. In a storage area, if you use shelves all the way to the ceiling. In a garage, you can use the shelf, you can put things in the, you can put like 2x4s and put things in the actual ceiling above the garage door. So use that space up there. An example I always give, pet nets, right? The things you put in a little kid's room to put stuffed animals in the corner. That's a great place to use and to get stuffed animals out of the way when it's popular, when they get in the way of everything else and they take so much space. Space near the floor. There are cubbies you can put underneath a window. You can do a line of cubbies under the window, under the bed boxes, are wonderful things that we often forget to use in our daily organizing. Space in the corners. There are corner shelves. There are actually corner cubby units that you can get. You can do corner shelves that go all the way to the ceiling if you're in a small space. Space on the door is over the door organizers. In the cabinets, so over the door of the cabinet, there's lots of different ones, or larger doors. If you have a pantry, putting a shoe organizer on the back of your pantry and putting snacks in it. In a utility closet, putting a shoe organizer over the back of the door and putting cleaning supplies in it is huge. I did a utility closet. Someone had a utility closet kind of near their kitchen, and we did that, and we put even tools and Scotch tape, and we stored that because they had limited space on shelves, but they had this door, and we were able to put various tools, various adhesives, various things all in the back of a door. So over the door organizers, And in cabinets, you can get ones that hold garbage bag, rolls of garbage bags. Put your cleaning supplies that you grab out all the time, put them on drawer organizers over the cabinet doors on the inside. Okay, use that hidden space. Space on the walls. I've done where people have had a very small master bedroom. They wanted a nightstand and didn't have space for it. You can do a floating shelf right there for your things. It can be at bed height or a little higher off to the side for a nightstand. There's fold up desks. During the pandemic, that was a big thing. People are like, I don't have a desk to work at. You can do a desk that folds down, or under the staircase is another really good place to put things. So this just gives you, these are just a couple of things you can do, but my urgency for you is don't forget the wasted space. If you look at it and go, well, I don't have any space, train yourself to use this rhyme. You can print it out to train yourself to look for those hidden spaces. Now, a couple hacks, a couple of my favorite things that I work with clients on are, the first one is memory bins. That is purely the hefty bin that you see on the left. Those bins have a raised lid. It is so easy how many times have we had it where, put a 1 in the chat if you've ever had this, where you get everything in a bin and you can't close it. The lid doesn't fit. Put a 1 in the chat if that's happened, right? It happens a lot. These hefty bins have a raised lid. That extra 1.5 inches, you wouldn't think would be that beneficial, very beneficial. So they make hefty bins in all different sizes with the raised lid. You don't have to do hefty, but I just happen to know they're a good brand that does have a raised lid. That's the only reason I say that. Now, memory bins I tell people, use a 72 quart hefty bin. And I want you to do a bin for each person in your household. And this is your legal dumping ground for anything that you're not going to use it. You don't really want to display it, but you're not ready to get rid of it. Like, I don't know, a ticket stub to a cruise you went on for your honeymoon. You're not going to display it. You don't really need to use it. Put it in the memory bin. It's a legal dumping ground for anything that's important to you for that. Now, the containment principle, remember we talked about enclosing in containers? You do 1 memory bin for each person in your household. Because the containment principle says when that gets full, you have to go through it and see what you can get rid of. And I will tell you, you will be able to get rid of things because time gives perspective. We dump things into it because we don't think we're like, oh, I need to keep this. I need to keep this. And then time passes and it gets full. We need to go through it. We go, why did I keep that? So time gives perspective and you will be able to get rid of something. I promise you. So memory bins, really important. The hefty bins with the raised lid, really important. The next one is the tea organizer. That's on the right-hand side. Those are awesome. They're literally this wide and they hold 100 bags of tea. And it fits in a cabinet. That's one of the things that so many of my clients are is one of their favorite things. So if you like tea, or even frankly, if you don't like tea, but you have it for guests, I hear that a lot. I don't even like tea, Jen, but I have it for guests. And they're annoyed that it takes up so much room. So put it in this tea organizer and it will take up very little room. You can pull it out for guests, easy thing. So that tea organizer, you can get that on Amazon really easily, other places too. The pantry bins, the ones on the lower right, or lower left, excuse me, the blue ones, you can get them in all different colors, but this is the key that makes these interesting, is they're very long. You can get them in 24 inches long, 22 inches long, 18 inches long. So if you have these areas, like a lot of times pantries are really deep, and that's why things fall to the back. Or you have bins, but there's wasted space in the back. Get these long bins and you can use that wasted space and fit more in your pantry. So they actually come in really long and also different widths of things. You do not have to have them in blue. You can get them in white, clear, red, green, blue, all that stuff. Okay. So those bins are really, really awesome too, because it's not easy to find really long bins Take it for someone who has organized a lot of pantries. Okay. So the last one I want to give you is tension rod trips. The little, you think of a shower curtain rod. That's what I mean when I say tension rod, but you can get little ones. Okay. So what you can do, one is you can put under your kitchen sink, you put a tension rod there, and you can hang your every cleaners that you use all the time, hang them by the handle of the spray bottle from the tension rod, and they're easy to access. That's one thing. You can hang bags of doll outfits by having a tension rod in the closet, and you can hang the bags of doll outfits there. Hang hooks on it for purses and things like that. So if you have a closet and you have maybe one little corner that's a couple inches depth there, you can put a tension rod there and hang things from that and use that wasted space. Okay, so in the sides of the closets to hang scarves, bags, anything like that. Actually, I've organized some preschools where we did these and we hung bags of puzzle pieces and the puzzle boards for the people in a closet instead of having it all out, because then they could take 1 or 2 bags of puzzles for each table for the kids and organize it that way. Layer your spices in a cabinet. You can actually get tension rods and level them in a cabinet, and you can put use the height to put different spices on. You just put them, look at the width of the spice, and you can set them on that. Okay. You can use it as a shelf to hold spare paper towel rolls, because you can roll them onto it, or you can set them on top of it. The tension rods are really good for shelves to vertically organize baking pans. So you can put them in a cabinet, and you can use it as a way to stand your baking pans up. Okay. Another thing, if you have a lot of crafts, hang spools of ribbon, hang spools, or if a gift wrapping, if you do a lot of gift wrapping, spools of ribbon on a tension rod in a closet uses that space wisely. Okay. So those are just some quick hacks and stuff. And I have given you a lot of information. Now, as far as maintaining your things, whatever you choose to do, whatever hacks you do, whatever order you bring to whatever space, find your way. That is important. Remember, I talked about we're each different. Our chaos is different. For some of you, your garage may be the area where you struggle, and other people might be like, my garage is fine, but my home office is the place. Somebody else might be, my kitchen is where. Find your way. Declutter your spot. Look at the space that you have and do that. The next thing is schedule it. Once you get things organized, like say I have a talk on paper management and stuff. And once we get, like I tell people, once you get your daily life managing paper and information spot into set, schedule in your calendar once a week, put it into your calendar, go through papers at the control center. It's a reminder to, if things have piled up, to go and clean it off. So schedule it, actually put it in your calendar. If you're talking about kids' toys, make it a part of a schedule. When do you have everyone pick up their toys? Is it once a day? Is it once a week? Is it once a month? Make it part of the family's routine. When it's a routine, when it's scheduled, it's easier to maintain. Next thing is reward yourself in your family. If you're like, hey, I've organized the garage, or I spent an hour organizing the garage, yay me, give yourself a treat. We do this with kids all the time, but reward yourself. As adults, we deserve that. So if you say to your family, hey, if all of the toys get put away for the whole week and you put them in their homes, then we'll go out for pizza on Friday. Whatever it is, reward yourself and your family. The last thing for maintaining is do it one step at a time. It is so easy to be like, okay, I'm going to organize the garage, the kitchen, the office. I'm going to do all this stuff. And you get overwhelmed. Everyone gets overwhelmed and you stop. Do one little thing at a time, one step at a time. When you work methodically, it stays better. It sticks better. It's easier to maintain when you do it slowly and methodically. I promise you that. All right, now I'm going to just summarize really quick. And if you guys have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Let go of comparisons, perfection, and what doesn't fit your priorities. Get those obstacles out of the way. Remember the 5 principles of organizing to bring order to anything, anywhere. Organizing is broad yet personal. Find your way. Communication makes a big difference. Use those 4 T's of talking. Use them to communicate what you need done. And then when something's done, how to maintain it. Be creative. Look at your wasted space. Remember the creative hacks. There's many more of them. I just gave you a little glimpse of ones. Reward yourself and your family. And remember, even if you're super motivated, I want you to do one thing, get that set, get that a good habit, get a good routine with that, and then organize the next. So promise me that you're not going to do many, many, many areas tomorrow or this weekend. Okay. So one thing at a time. You guys have been great. I really, really appreciate it. I honor the fact that you have spent the time looking at a screen with me. If you guys know what a QR code, the funny QR code is, the funny looking square in the middle, you just hold your phone up to it, the camera, and up will pop a link. If you are willing, I'd love some feedback. This brings up to a survey, completely optional, that just gives me feedback. It helps me to learn and grow. I have no problem with constructive criticism. Just don't be mean. That's all I ask. Don't be mean, but I can handle constructive criticism. But in all reality, what I do is at the end of every month, I take all the people that have given me feedback in the speaking for that month, and I draw a winner out for a free hour of virtual organizing. So I love that if you are willing to do the survey for me, you have the option, you have the possibility of winning the free hour of virtual organizing. I will also send this to Karen, the person who coordinated it for the library, and she can send it out in an email to you guys as well. It is also the same QR code that's on your handout if you did print that out. So it's in many different places. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them, or you can also follow me on all the social media, or you can text me, email me, call me, any of that. I'm always happy to help. And also, I hope you feel a little more encouraged and empowered to do this crazy thing we call life. So I appreciate your attendance, your attention and your time. And thank you so much for having me. Any questions? And don't worry if you don't have any, because I know sometimes it can be just letting everything sink in and all of that kind of stuff. But if you do, I'm also willing to, if you want to just ask me a question, you can unmute yourself and ask me that way also, since we're done. I don't mind taking it that way. So if you guys have anything, any questions? And again, no pressure. Thank you so much for having me and listening. And I hopefully will see you guys some other times. And incidentally, look in your libraries, not just this library, but other libraries, and take advantage of their programming. Not just your library, the option of this virtual has really allowed us, you can look all across the country and take advantage of different authors and speakers that they have, because that's a gift that we didn't have before the virtual thing. So I always try to encourage people to do that as well.
Hi, this is Carissa. Can I ask something or say
Sure,
something?
absolutely.
Actually, it's not a question, it's a comment. I want to say thank you for your time and your enthusiasm, because so many people's presentations are dry. They're informative at times. Yours was informative, and you're so cute and peppy, and it comes across. You seem very genuine and authentic and very personable, and and especially coming across on virtually. I know it's very challenging at times.
I appreciate that.
So very, very personable. And I wasn't able to chat while the presentation was going on. Yeah. So I was listening, and I want to say thank you. Really,
thank you so
aside
much.
From in the chat, I just want to say thank you very much.
I appreciate that. And your words mean a lot to me, because I try very hard. My whole goal in everything that I do is really, if I can give encouragement and information to help people just feel a little less alone and a little more empowered to do crazy life. So I appreciate that. And it's, and it took a while to get used to because I'm looking at myself, right? Who likes to talk to themselves? I mean, don't get me wrong, I talk to myself all the time, I feel like, but I don't need to do it on Zoom. So it took a little bit to get used to. So I appreciate your kind words. That means a lot.
I appreciate it. So I realize how hard that is, looking at, like you said, yourself. And so yeah, I do. I appreciate it.
Thank
I for example, my pantry, for instance, I know when people would open mine, they're like, oh my gosh, because mine's so organized. And so when you're talking about a junk drawer and things like that, those are really organized. Mine's more the papers. I'm working on medical bills and medical. I'm doing actually like a 5-year audit right now. So that's what I'm doing while I'm listening to you. And so I appreciate some of the hacks, and I was writing a lot of these things down. I took some screenshots for things that I thought I can't write all this stuff down. So I took some screenshots. So I appreciate it. I want to look into this a bit more. And
I would say, Carissa, too, and this is for everybody to know that you brought up a really good point, is the fact that, like I said, everybody's different. And the thing is, I've learned in 23 years of doing this is no one's immune. There, like, you can be really, like, have certain areas all set and be really good on that, but we all have something, whether it be an emotional connection to something that we struggle with, or whether it be like a paper situation, or whether it be I've worked with enough people to know no one's immune. And it's real easy to look at other people's lives and go, oh, they have all this all together, or this all together. And I will tell you, no one has it all together. So,
for sure. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you again. Thanks, guys. Any other questions or anything? No, but thank you. And thank you, Larry, for hosting for the library. I definitely appreciate that as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Jennifer. This was wonderful. It's definitely inspired me. I have a shelf in particular that I'm like, oh, I could dedicate 20 minutes to that this weekend.
And again, it's those little things. And incidentally, if you on my website, I have an events tab. It's just jborganizing.com, where I speak, where I have all my different presentations, or all the different places that I'm speaking. Now, I will warn you, the speaking season tends to end in June and then start up again August, September. So I only have a couple more this speaking season, and then now I'm booking for June, like not June, August and beyond. So if you're like, why is there nothing in July, June, July, August? Because we don't attend speakers in June and July. So, but incidentally, you can look and see if you're interested in any other topics, I do have them. There's a lot of ones that are open to the public. So
I also really appreciate the point that you made about virtual library events, because it's true. You can check a lot of other libraries and attend a lot of free virtual events that you don't need to show a library card to prove that you live there. So it's really good to just check out and see what other libraries are doing. But of course, we appreciate everybody for coming to this one.
Yep. Yeah, keep patronizing your home library also.
All right, if there are no other questions, we can go ahead and wrap it up. This recording will be available on the library's website and our social media for 2 weeks, and then it will be gone. And that's to protect Jennifer's intellectual property and all of the work that she does. But if you have anybody who wanted to attend tonight but couldn't make it, just let them know they can check our website.
Sounds good. Everyone have a wonderful evening. And I hate to say this in May, but stay warm, because it just seems so cold. So
I know, it's wild. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Have a lovely evening. Take care.